Hi everyone, this is the last assignment for this class, the final project which will be due next week, December 14th of 2020. And for this project you should be at a place where you know a lot of the commands in order to complete this project, a lot of the techniques for plotting, for going into Paperspace and actually creating viewports, and hopefully this project just brings all of the things you've learned in this class and in order to produce this final project and the final submission. So for this project, like I said, you'll be creating a drawing set, which it will include 3 different drawings: an elevation, a roof plan, and a wall section of a 2-story house, a residential house. So you'll be creating a new ACAD file. So you want to set up your ACAD file with these layers, and then changing the units to 1/16 architectural, and then the insertion scale at inches. So that's the first step you would need to take for this final submission, is just to set up your ACAD file, just like you did for all the other assignments. And so once you set up that file, you will be recreating 2 drawings, the elevation and the roof plan. So I will be uploading this PDF file, which includes the 3 drawings in your final submission. So you'll be recreating this roof plan, as well as this elevation of this 2-story residential house. So you'll be recreating these 2, but then XREFing this one drawing into your model space and then putting it on a Paperspace. And I'll walk you through how to do that. But basically you're not going to recreate this drawing, you're just going to recreate the roof plan and the elevation. So for these drawings, what you'd want to do in AutoCAD is open up the AutoCAD file that you create, set up all your layers with these different line weights, line types. For the most part, it'll be default, continuous, and with these colors over here. And then one thing that I want to clarify, for all the dimensions that you see on the PDF example that I give you, you do not need to include all of these in your final submission. I'll go over that right now in the AutoCAD file itself. So in my file you can see that there are 2 different sets of dimensions. You can see the white ones and then these magenta ones. So the ones that I do want you to include are the white ones. So you see there are specific dimensions that I definitely want you guys to include in your drawings. The other ones are for your reference only in order to draw the whole drawing. So you can see over here, for example, this line or this dimension is 8 feet by with 5.5 inches, so 8 foot 5. And so you'll draw that line to that dimension. Since it is a white dimension, you're going to include that in your final submission. But these over here, these are just for your reference to show you that this line is 1 foot and 1.5 inches below or above this line over here. So this is how you're just going to reference these magenta dimensions. That's just showing you the distances that you'll need in order to draw these lines. And so another example would be over here. This 4-inch over here dimension string is just showing you the distance between each of these siding pieces. So this is the siding of the house, and it's just showing you the dimensions there. So what you can do to draw this siding is just to draw a line, copy it up 4 inches because they're all 4 inches, and then you can just trim out for the windows, the doors, and all the other elements to the drawing. So just pay attention to all of these different dimension strings, and hopefully it all makes sense within the export that I'll give you. I know right here in the example that I give you, it is a little bit confusing. I'll actually give you a cleaner version of this to show you which dimensions I will need and which ones you don't need to include, because right now it's missing a few because they didn't print for some reason. So I'll just submit a clean version, and hopefully you guys will understand which dimensions you need to actually include. So back to the AutoCAD drawing. So basically, like I said, the magenta ones are for your reference. This just shows you that the door is 7 foot 3 inches. This window is the same thing, 7 foot 3. You can just see that they're aligned, so that's going to show you where and how to draw your different elements. I will also be uploading a blocks file where it will have all these different blocks that you'll need. I actually include this dimension string as well in here so that you can actually just copy it instead of creating your new one. It's just a little bit easier for you guys since it will be due next week. The same thing with the elevation markers on your drawings. You can literally just select this from the AutoCAD file that I upload to Blackboard. So you can just copy it by hitting Control C on your computer, on your keyboard, or you can see down here it says copy clip, so you can actually type copy and then clip on your command bar. And so that's just going to copy it to your clipboard, and you can actually just go back to your original file and then paste it there by Control V on your keyboard. So the same thing for this hatch. You will not have this hatch as the default in AutoCAD because it's like a stone. You can see here that it pops up as this one with like a slash through it. So what you can just do is select it and then copy it from that file by Control C. Going back to your other file, Control V, and then you can see how you can adjust it as so by like stretching it out, making it wider, or adjusting the endpoints how you need to. So it's just a quicker way to do that hatch. And the same thing with the door. And for this hatch over here, you can actually just create a solid hatch. There's no distance for this one. Just give your whole house a base in order to show that it is on the ground and not just floating up in space. So just make it roughly this size. Don't make it too large or else it won't fit on your paper space. So another thing I want you guys to consider is just to keep your drawing clean. Make sure all your windows are on the same layer. You can see here that one of them is red, but that's just because it's on my file. Just make sure on your file it's red, or it's the color that you make the windows. Just make sure everything's on the correct layer. That way everything prints nicely for you guys and it doesn't come out too distorted on the PDF. So hopefully this all makes sense. Once I upload the cleaner version to show you guys which dimensions you'll need, hopefully it'll make a lot more sense for you guys as of which dimensions you want to include in the final submission and which ones are just there for reference only. So the same thing for the roof plan. I'll color code it, that way you guys know which ones to include and which ones just to leave out and just use for your reference. So in AutoCAD, you'll also need to just include your roof plan. So you'll be drawing both of these in the same drawing. That's just going to be easier for you in order to create your paper space down at the bottom and create this drawing set. So just make sure you draw your elevation and your roof plan on the same drawing in the same AutoCAD file. So then once you draw your elevation, you have everything labeled correctly, everything's on the correct layers, you would move on to your roof plan, or if you want to start with your roof plan, that's fine. It's a little bit easier because it's more of a rectangle and you're just copying the lines how you need to be, but you can see here that the purple magenta ones are just showing you that these lines are 2 feet apart, these the same 2 feet apart, starting from here 2 feet and this corner 2 feet. And then you can see the overall dimensions in white. You would want to include those as well. And then you can see that there are some overhangs. These blue lines are the walls. That would be for the exterior walls of the house, and there's an overhang over here. You can see it's 1 foot overhang there. So that's just going to help you to draw this overall shape. You can see you can start off with your interior walls at 31 feet 7.5 inches, and then just do a 1 foot overhang. That's going to show you where this green line needs to end, and the same thing over here, the 1 foot overhang. The overhang on this side and on the other opposite side is 8 inches, so just make sure this is 8. And then these are giving you the wall thicknesses and other dimensions that you'll need. So in order to add these dimensions, I mentioned I give it to you here, so you can just copy it. So Control C. You can go back to that one drawing and then Control V, and you can just place it there. So then when you create a dimension, I'll just give you an example. Let's say I go to my dimensions and I'll just give you a dimension, let's say from this here to this part here. And if I pull it out, you can see it's super tiny, and so it's not the same scale as the other ones that I would want you to include it by. One way you can do that is actually matching properties. So if you want it to look like this, you would select that object, type in MA, and you can see match prop comes up, so that's going to match the properties of the thing you just selected. So select that command, and so once we have this selected, highlighted, now whatever we want to change is going to match the properties of this object. So if I hover over it, you can see that it wants to change it. And so I can just click on it and it changed it to match the look and the properties of this overall dimension here. So then once you actually match the properties, you can close out of it. So then whenever you go to make new dimensions, I'm just going to give you this one for example, you can just do the same thing, MA, enter, and just hover and select that one, and it's going to match the properties. Another thing you can do is actually copying it. So if I copy this up to this point, and you can drag these endpoints down, and it's going to give you that dimension. So these are just different ways that you can create dimension strings without having to actually go in and create your own dimension style. That's just an easier way when it's like a larger company with standards, and actually they want the standards to be the same within every drawing set. So that's just one way to do create your own dimension style. But then for this drawing, since it's just these two like drawings for the set, you can just copy the ones that I give you on the blocks file and match the properties, edit the points in order to create your dimension strings. And that goes the same for any of these as well. You can match the properties for anything basically in your file. So here, if I press paste, if I actually type in MA here and go over here, it's going to want to change it to match the properties of this one as well. Just because that's how AutoCAD works, it wants to match whatever the properties are, whether that's the text height, the layer color, what layer it is on. That's what match property does. So that's just a quicker way for you guys to do your dimension styles or any text that you want to do. So what I just showed you, if you wanted to create a new text, a single line text, let's say I just do that and type in ABC, you can see it comes out like this. But if I wanted to match this text, I would just select it, type in MA, hover over it, click, and then once I get out of it I can press escape, and you can see it changed it to that same properties of this one. It didn't include the all caps, so you'd have to just go back, double click, and then change it to the all caps in order to make it look like this one. But that's just the basics of matching the properties. So that's one technique that you can do for certain things. So let's say you accidentally draw a line in a different layer or in a different color, but you want it to be on this layer. You can select it, type in MA, select the line, and now it's on the same layer as the original that you selected, and it's the same color. So that's one technique you can use for this entire project, is matching properties. So in that blocks file that I gave you, you have your arrows. If you want to use these arrows or create your own, they're basically just arrows that you can create, but you can also like adjust them. They won't, since it's not a block, it won't actually adjust the arrow location. So you can just manually draw arrows, then fill them with a hatch like this, or you can just copy and rotate them as you want to for these symbols over here. And that same goes for over here. You can just use that arrow that I included in the blocks file and just copy and paste them into your file. The same with the text. I included that text. You can use that one for the overall notes, and then these for the elevation markers for the heights of your drawings. So once you actually complete these drawings, the next thing you want to do, according to the instruction sheet, is to insert your wall section into your drawing with the XREF command. We went over that a couple of weeks ago in that last assignment, where you just want to insert an XREF into this one file. So in order to do that, I'll have that submitted on Blackboard so you guys can download that file, which will be called wall section, and you would need to XREF it into this file. So the way to do that, like we learned before, is just type in XREF, hit enter, and then your external references window will pop up. Since you have nothing actually XREF'd, you will only see the title of your drawing, which you guys should be saving constantly so that in case it crashes or freezes and you lose your work, you don't lose too much and you just have whatever you saved. So then in order to XREF that one file, you would open up the XREF command and then go up here to this little drawing where it says attach DWG. And then you want to search for your actual drawing. In this case, I have it under a project, so just go here, wall section, open that up, and then the attach external reference options window will pop up. You want to double check these settings, make sure you don't change the scale on this one because it's already at a certain scale, and I just want you guys to insert it how it is, or else it will come out too small or too big in your drawing. So make sure that it's not checked over here and it just says 1 to 1 to 1. And then the insertion point you can actually specify on the screen because you can place it wherever you want to be, wherever you want it in your model space. So once you have all that, you can press OK, and then you can see it over here in the model space how I'm dragging it. And then all you want to do is just place it wherever in your model space, and it should pop up like sort of looking like it's locked. Kind of like dulled out in color. That's because it is an XREF. So whenever you click on it over here in the XREF window, it will select it all. So then once you insert it, you can zoom into it, get familiar with it just to see what a wall section will look like. This is just something that engineers and architects need to include in all their drawing sets in order to show how walls or wall systems, roof systems, or any other packages within your building, like window packages, how all of those things will need to be built. We need detailed sections, wall sections, detailed drawings of specific parts of your building in order to understand how they will be built in the field. So you can see here this is a wall section including the roof details, a window package over here, and how it overall meets the ground and the structure behind it. So that's why I want you guys to include this in your drawing set so that it will look like more of a complete drawing set where it has an elevation, a roof plan, and a wall section. I didn't want to overload you guys too much with a floor plan just because of the time constraints, and this would be the last project, and we did do floor plans in the previous as homework assignments, so I wanted to give you guys a variety of different drawing types, so in this case the elevation and the roof plan and the wall section. So after all of this, you should have your your elevation drawn, your roof plan drawn, and then your wall section just inserted as an XREF into your drawing. So the next thing you'd want to do is actually move into Paperspace. Once you have everything, once you feel like you have everything correct with all the things you want to show in Paperspace, you'd want to move into that. And it's going to be somewhat similar to the last assignment where you went into Paperspace, and what you're going to do is actually insert that same AutoCAD file for the title block. That same title block that you used for the last assignment, you're going to include it here. You can actually put in your logo there as well. And what you're going to do is change your page setup from 8.5 by 11, whatever is the standard when you open up your Paperspace, and you're going to change it to 11 by 17 like I have it here. So in order to do that, remember you go up to the top, press layout, then page setup. And then you're going to have all your layouts here. If you have multiples down at the bottom, they're all going to show up. But what you're just going to do is select the first one and hit modify. Then your page setup is going to pop up. Just make sure that you have an Adobe PDF or anything similar on your computer, whether that's DWG to PDF or the Microsoft Print to PDF. Just make sure that it is a PDF when it prints. It is 11 by 17. If it is printing a little bit weird, or if it's not working, try tabloid or try 11 by 17, whichever one would work fine for your computer. Just make sure it is an 11 by 17 or a tabloid, and it's not letter size or 8.5 by 11. So then once you change the paper size, make sure it's monochrome or grayscale, whichever you guys have on your computers. And then in your plot area, make sure it is in layout, because that's going to print out your whole layout, and you won't need to center the plot or change any of the other settings in here. Then what you can do is just preview it. For you guys, it might show up a little bit different, maybe, depending on how your AutoCAD reads the preview, but it should look like this, where it fits nicely within the page, everything's black and white, and then you can just X out of the preview. So then once you have all that, do not change the scale over here. Keep this at 1:1, because if you change the scale, it's going to affect the whole paper space scale, and it's not going to look right. So just make sure you leave this as 1:1, and just make sure it's in inches, because then it's going to print out correctly there. So then once you have all these settings, you're going to press OK, and then close out of this. And it should change your paper space to 11 by 17, but your viewport itself might look like this. Don't worry, that's not wrong, it's not printing wrong or anything like that. Remember, you can just select this rectangle, this viewport window, and all you can see that there's the two dots over here, the endpoints all around, and what you can do is just adjust this layout. So when you change your paper space page from 8.5 by 11 to an 11 by 17, it might show up like this. So it might show up like this, where the viewport window is super small, and then your model space images over here, or the drawings, are super small themselves, or they can be really big. Just make sure, don't freak out, it's not wrong. All you have to do is open up the window a little bit. You don't have to do it exactly, it doesn't matter. Remember, you're going to change this to a non-print layer. So the non-print layer, we went over that in the last video. We just don't want this viewport to show up, this actual rectangle, so it's not going to print anyway, so it doesn't matter how big or small it is or how oddly shaped it is. You just need to expand it so that when you actually select it and change the scale at the bottom, that's what's going to blow up the drawing and make it to the correct scale. So in this case, for both of your drawings, for the elevation and for the roof plan, you want it to be at 1/4 inch scale. So you're going to adjust your viewport just to be a little bit bigger, and then you're going to change your scale to 1/4 inch. And you can see how it zoomed it in all the way, but it's like somewhere over here to the left. What you can just do is double click within your viewport, type in zoom, and then at the bottom it gives you all these options. What you're just going to type in is extents, because that's just going to zoom into your extents of your drawing over your model space. So you can just type in extents. Oh, let me do that again. Zoom, extents, or you can click on it and you can see how it brought you back. But since you did the zoom, the scale changed. But now that we have it relatively at a better manageable scale, rather than it being too small or too large, what you can do is just pan, because remember, we're technically in model space within paper space. We're in model space within the viewport, but then our viewport is in paper space, if that makes sense for you guys. So you can pan over to the drawing that you want to actually include. You can zoom in a little bit, but then make sure you always change it to the correct scale. You can see it zoomed it in a little bit. Once you zoomed it in, and you can actually, pan to center it a little bit, you can move it over. You can just double click out of the viewport, or you can hit this down here, model or paper space, you can toggle in and out of it like that. So then now you can see that it's centered on the page. You can add your title block. You can add this little option here in order to give your title, or your drawing a title. And you can actually just copy that from the blocks page that I'll give you. If you go to the page layout 1 of the blocks file, I'll have that included here, so you can just copy that over the same way you copied all the other blocks. Copy and then paste, and it should pop up like that. Okay. So then if you copy it from the file, you can see that it says north, but what you want to do is change this to west because it is a west elevation. So you could just double click and then change it to west there. So remember that in Paperspace, the dashed line is your printing area. Anything outside of that dashed line, it's not going to print. So if you can see here, your title block is a little bit too close to that edge, but then it has a lot of space at the top. You can just select everything and just move it a little bit. If you want to be more accurate, you can actually, you know, measure out the whole distance, but I'm just going to do it for now. Just moving it up a little bit manually. So just make sure it prints out correctly, it looks centered on the page, and then what you're going to want to do is do the same thing for your roof plan or for your elevation. Whichever you start with, you're going to want to do the same thing for your other drawing. So if you have layout 2 on your drawing, you can do the same thing. Change the page setup, you can change the viewport, add your title block, but an easier way that I like to do this is to just go to your layout 1, right click on the bottom, you can see move or copy. You're going to select that and you're just going to select layout 1 and you're going to want to create a copy. So this is basically going to say you want to move or copy the selected layouts either before layout 1, before layout 2, or if you have multiples, it's going to show you if you want to do before layout 3, layout 4, etc. Or if you want to move it to the end, it's going to give you that option that you can move it to the end of the your list drawings at the bottom. So whichever one will work fine. I'm just going to move it to the end, but just make sure you hit create a copy and you're going to press OK. So you can see it created a layout 1 parentheses 2. So that basically means it created a copy of layout 1. And for you guys, if you want to make it easier, what you can do is double click on layout 1, the name, and you can label that to elevation just to make it easier on yourself. And then you can do the same thing for this one. I'm going to rename it the roof plan. So then once you relabel those, it created the copy, and I can actually delete this one if I want to, but I'll leave it as is. And if I zoom in, it should have created an exact copy of your other drawing that you made. But notice how the viewport is a little bit, well, yeah, like extends past the drawing paper space. It's too big. So what you want to do is just, if this happens to you, just make it smaller to fit within the paper space, or else it's going to print whatever's in the model space and it's not going to be correct. So then once you made that copy, what you can do is just double click, and then you can actually zoom into your drawing, whatever that is. For me, I will be creating the roof plan because I already have my elevation. So then I just center it on it a little bit, or remember, if you can't find it, just do zoom extents. And so then you will zoom into this one, but make sure you just change the scale again to 1/4, and then you can double click out. So you can see it's a little cut off at the bottom, so what you can do is just move everything down a little bit and select the rectangle and just extend it a little bit further down so you don't chop anything off and that everything is legible on the page. So that's just an easier way, instead of actually going through and changing the page setup and inserting your title block again and stuff like that. So then these scales, you can see them on the example sheet that I'll give you. The proposed roof plan will be at 1/4 of an inch, so the 1/4 inch. The same thing with your elevation. And then over here for the wall section, because it is a detailed drawing, it's a lot smaller, you're going to change that scale to 3/4 of an inch. And you can see it over here. It's going to be laid across this way, and that's fine, just so that it's bigger enough to see on the page. So you're going to do the same thing for this drawing. You can copy it, move it to the end, create a copy, change the name to wall section. And so when you're in it, you can see that if I go toggle back and forth, it looks the same because it is a copy. So just make sure you're editing the correct one. So I don't want this to be the roof plan anymore. I can just double click, zoom out a little bit, pan, find my wall section, zoom in a little bit so we can see it, but then make sure that you change the scale to the correct one. And you can see it blew it up a little bit more. I can double click out of it, but just make sure that nothing gets cut off by just extending the viewport a little bit, so you can see all the words on the page. You can leave the tag here at the bottom, or you can just rotate it and put it at the or at the side over here like it does in the example. Either way, as long as it's labeled, I'll give you credit for it, but just make sure it's labeled correctly according to the example, which is drafting 2. And then anything in the title block, you could just match that, which in this case it's wall section. So if I go back to my elevation, just to give you guys the information for here, the scale, just like in the last video, you can select it, explode it, and take this text, move it over, or copy it over, and adjust it. So you're going to change the scale to whatever scale this is, so 1/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. So you're going to type it exactly how you see it here. You're going to type it this way. So remember, copy this little tag over after you explode it, and change that text to match the scale over here, exactly how you see it. The date, write the date that you've drawn it or you submitted it. Drawn by is going to be your first and last name. Checked by will be my initials, JC. The project, I want you to write final project. The logo, you can include the same logo that you did for the last project, or you can come up with a new one, whichever you guys want. You could be creative with it. And then the drawings, what I want you to type in is elevations. So that's going to give you the drawing title of what you see on that drawing sheet. So your drawing number for these drawings, I want you to follow these over here, this example. So in this case, the roof plan is the first drawing, but since I drew this one first in mine, I put 01, but I want you guys to follow this example. So for you guys, you can draw the roof plan first. That will be your first drawing. So you're going to type in A-01. For your second drawing, you're going to do A-02. You're going to do elevations, logo, and change all this information. For the wall section, you're going to change that to wall section in the drawing title. The project's still going to remain final project, but the scale is going to be different. Remember, the scale is going to match whatever the drawing is. So in this case, it's 3/4 of an inch equals 1 foot. Your drawing number will be A03. So just follow the example for the drawing number and the roof plan and the names of all the drawings, and then I'll just make sure I upload a clean version of what dimensions I want you guys to include. But for right now, these PDFs could get you started on how to draw your roof plan and your wall section. So if you guys have any problems, reach out to me. Please make sure it's before the submission date. I'll try to make myself available for a WebEx, so if you would prefer to share your screen on a WebEx and I can walk you through your issue, that I'll be more than happy to set up a time with you and actually do that. But if it's over email, I can answer it through email as well. Just attach some screenshots so I can see what you're talking about, more or less what the issue is, and then I can walk you through that in email if you guys can't meet through WebEx. So just remember that these dimensions, I'll make this clear in the PDF, but For the most part, these dimensions, the magenta ones you won't need to include, but the white ones you will if you are going off this video. But I'll give you guys a clean version as a PDF, so it's easier for you guys to do that. So just make sure everything's on the correct layer. Your hatches are showing up correctly. Everything is the same line weight when it's on a layer, so the windows should be the same color, same line weight. Make sure everything's on the same layer in terms of dimensions. All of them are in dimensions and not on the text layer if you have multiple layers like that. The roof plan, make sure you have the walls underneath, and just make sure you read all of the dimensions that you see on the handout that I'll give you. Just make sure you read it, because everything on there is going to show you how to draw this drawing. You're just going to have to search for the text and the dimensions, because you can see here, if I give you this dimension, it's just giving you the dimension of the wall underneath, the foundation walls, and it's not giving you the dimension of the overall roof. So just make sure that you read, oh, there's 1 foot overhang over here, so that's going to make this 1 foot across over here, and this 1 foot here. So overall, the overall dimension of this one should be 33 and 7 inches and 7.5 inches, or whatever it may be in this case over here. Just make sure you read all the dimensions, because everything on this sheet is going to show you what or how to draw the actual plan. And I'll include more dimensions for you guys, because I can see that there's one missing already here. This one's just in the midpoint, but I'll clean this up and I'll give you guys a fresh PDF so that you guys can start drawing these 2 plans. And remember that it's due December 14th, so next week. So if you have any questions, reach out to me as soon as possible rather than later, because then I'll be submitting final grades due, and that's what I'll be working on for you guys. I'll be grading all your assignments and projects that you've done to this point, so just bear with me if you see all your grades coming in at once. Just know I'm just working on them, and if it's taking me a little bit longer, I apologize. But if you have any questions for me for any grades, you can also reach out to me and I can meet with you guys. So just make sure that when you print this to black and white, just make sure it is in black and white and grayscale and not in colored. And finally, what I'm going to show you right now is how to plot it or print it in order to create one PDF. Instead of having 3 individual PDFs, you can actually use the command publish, or that option, so that all the drawings would come out as a set and not in individual PDFs. So if you go to Model Space, you can see you have your 3 drawings here, and then Paper Space, you should have all your layouts at the bottom of the drawings that you'll need. So in this case, this layout, I don't need it, so I'll just delete that one. And so now I have my 3 drawings that I'll need. I'm just gonna, you can actually click and drag it over to actually move these in order that you want them to print. So then once you have all your layouts done, every title block adjusted on the page layout, what you want to do, instead of actually going to the plot and then, continuing to plot a single sheet, what you'd want to do is to try the batch plot or publish. So what I'm going to show you guys, actually I'm going to X out of this so you can actually see, is you can go up to the A at the top and hit publish. It's going to take a little bit, but then what this window is going to do, it's going to actually show you all the different sheets that are open within your AutoCAD. So if you have multiple drawings open here, those are actually going to pop up as well. So you can see Civil 1200 elevation, elevation, elevation. These are all the layouts that are part of this one drawing, and then the other 3 are the layouts that are part of this drawing. So we do not want to print those, so I'm just going to click on each one by, I could do it manually by selecting one and deleting it. Over here you can see the little dash, selecting another one, or I can just click, I can select on one, hold down shift on my keyboard and select all of them if you want to do multiple deletes. So that's what this little button does. If you highlight a drawing, you can delete it up here. As well, over here, the plus sign, you can actually add sheets. So if you wanted to add a different sheet on another drawing, you can actually click this. It's going to bring up your computer files. You can search for one, and actually it will insert the drawings that you would want in this little window. The next thing you'd want to do is remove this model space, because we don't want to print anything in model space. We just want the layouts, the paper space. So you can just select this and delete that one. And so after you do that, just make sure that there's no errors, and then what you'd want to do is just publish. And you can actually select publish in the background, because then that's going to just close out of this window. So you're just going to hit publish. It's going to ask you if you want to save the current list of sheets. That basically means if you just want to save it in case you want to go back and print the same amount. For most cases, I click no because I don't want it to save every time I open up a different AutoCAD drawing. It's just going to bring these up or something like that. So I just click no. And then what it's going to do, it's going to take a little bit of time, but it's going to publish your drawings together. So you can see your printing or publishing job is processing in the background. So that just allows you to keep working while it's publishing. You can see it down at the bottom over here, this little printer. It means it's actually publishing. And then once it's done, you can actually open it up in your PDF, in your files, wherever you saved it. But usually, if you have it set up a certain way, it'll pop up on your screen automatically once it's done. Yep, here we go. As you're done publishing. So I'm just going to save it over here. It still might take a while just because it's loading and actually saving to your computer this time. And you can see it's opening up this file. So right now it's giving me the option to save all of your drawings individually. You can see here how it opened up here. And now it's asking me to save the wall section now. And here is your wall section. So now we have all of these three different page setups or pages printed at the same time. Instead of actually plotting each individual one separately, they did it all at once. So then now all your drawings should have plotted individually. You can see them all three over here. And then the next thing you'd want to do is go to your files where you have those saved. And then I'm going to select all of them. So all three of them that we have, right click, and then I'm going to combine supported files in Acrobat. I understand maybe some of you might not have this this kind of Acrobat or like Adobe, so it might not even show up for you guys, and that's okay. You can just submit the three individual drawings as you printed it. I just wanted to show you the publish option, that way you don't have to continuously press the plot, and that way they all print out the same as one single plot instead of having them printed individually, like and creating that kind of hassle. So then you can submit that as your final submission for Blackboard. If you guys have any questions, like I said, let me know, and I'll just make sure to upload the instruction sheet as well as the cleaned up version of the example PDF that you guys can follow to create the drawings and recreate them.